YouTube, what is going on? Chris with Journos, Comics, and Pop Culture. We got a live one today, guys. And as always on my live videos, if you are catching this on the rewind and the replay, you might want to fast forward to the first couple of minutes here while I wait patiently to allow a few viewers to hop up on. We got a lot of things to talk about today. It's been a busy week for me engaging this topic of first appearances in comic books. So that conversation is not over. Probably will never be over in the industry or in the community. But for me, it's definitely something that you'll probably continually see me talk about even into the future. So Gomez, what's going on? Thanks for joining tonight. This was kind of on a whim. I tried to get as prepared as I possibly could for tonight's live discussion. And that's exactly why I'm going live with this instead of making another video. I produced a few videos this week discussing the controversy around first appearances in comic books. And I wanted this to be a live discussion because I don't want it to be a one-way, me talking at you all. I want this to be a discussion that is two ways, to where we all can, voice our opinions and so forth. Now, before I get into the topic of this evening, I definitely want to talk about some things on my channel. First off, I want to just say a huge thank you to all my subscribers. As I'm sure many of you know, my channel is monetized, and I'm not here being monetized to, pay the bills. But the one thing that I want you all to know about monetization is it helps me provide better content for you all. And I'm about to receive my first payment from YouTube. And with that, I am investing in a new webcam. So I will have a high definition quality webcam, which is going to make my videos and my streams a lot better quality for all you viewers. So and I want everyone to know that any kind of income that I get from YouTube through monetization, I will invest back into my channel. That is my goal. Like I said, it's not for any real personal gain. It's going to be something that's reciprocated back to you all, as viewers for supporting me and my channel. So I want to say thank you all for your continued support. With that being said as well, we have my 1,500 subscriber contest wrapping up at the end of this weekend. I did a video. I did two videos this week. I did one outlining the things you need to do to get a last minute entry in. And then I did another video showing all the entries that I have. So if you entered and your name is not on there, please let me know like before end of day Sunday. So we got just a handful of days here left. So again, lastly, I have about 3 more videos planned for the rest of this week. So be on the lookout for those. I have a video probably that's gonna show up tomorrow discussing how to really get your kids involved in a very creative way with collecting. And I think it's very good for these times right now where we are, sheltered in place for the most part still. And it's a good activity to allow your kids to be creative and get into comic books. So look out for that probably tomorrow. Of course, I still have to make my video, my do-it-yourself comic book unit video. And then I'll probably be showing out more of my collection this week as well. So with that being said, guys, we got some viewers in. I'm going to go ahead and get into the topic of discussion for this evening, and that is first appearance controversy. Some of you may have seen my videos that I did this week. Now, interesting enough, before I even did any videos talking about first appearance, cameo appearance controversy and all that, this was so heavily on my mind over the last couple of weeks, and I've been wanting to do a video on it. But I received some comments on a video that made me just say, you know what, I need to get in and make a video and get this done. That video, okay, dog, what's going on? That being said, I did a video discussing how to sell your comic collection, right? And I know a lot of people are like, "What? We don't want to sell our comic collection," but I talked about a lot of things in there. Like, do you sell to an LCS? Do you sell to an actual comic book store? You know, is it worth it? Do you break it down and do you become an eBay seller? Do you sell online? All these different things. And one book that I brought up was Annual X-Men 14, the first cameo of Gambit, and I was basically called out in the comments saying that that's not his cameo appearance, it's his first appearance. And it sparked me to, say, okay, look, let me do a video and really put this all into perspective. So for those that haven't watched that video, I have an outline that I have here, but I'm just going to briefly talk about those couple of videos that I did. I personally do not like the term cameo. And I explained that in my video. Merriam-Webster dictionary term for cameo is it has nothing to do with first, and it has to be done by a distinguished character that we recognize. Therefore, it can never be a first of anything. A cameo cannot be a first. All right, so that's my first issue with the term. For comic books, it's like, call a first appearance a first appearance. That's my personal opinion. So technically, if it was up to me, if I was defining these terms, I would absolutely, without doubt, label Uncanny X-Men Annual number 14 Gambit's first appearance. For his 266 appearance, I'd say first cover, first full story, or something like that. I do believe that there is a flaw in the industry about how we label these things, okay? But at the end of the day, that's my opinion, and ultimately, what dictates these labels is the industry. So for me to state that Annual 14 is his cameo appearance is factual, okay? But before I go on that rant, let's go into some key talking points. I got some points written up. I'm going to bring up on the screen here. I have a lot of things here. I got my Overstreet price guide here, okay? I got some I got some comic cards. How many of y'all remember these? Man, just pulling these out. I went, dug in my closet, pulled these out just for this topic, and it makes me want to buy some more. I have like the Marvel Series 2 from like 91, and I'm missing like 3 cards. So I'm like, man, I need to complete my set like almost 30 years later, right? Anyway, so I got that. I got a lot of things I'm going to share on screen to dive into this issue as well. So let's get into it. And just start out with looking at some things that I typed up here, guys. And again, I want everyone to chime in. I want to hear your guys' opinion as we go through. I'll try to engage as much as possible. I will be splitting screen, so if I don't catch a comment right away, just bear with me. But let's bring something on screen right now to address basically how we define first appearances in comic books and what perspectives and what angles that comes from and what angles we can approach this as collectors. Mike, what's going on? Robert, thank you guys for joining. 2 mics. We got Mike and Michael. All right. So let's pull this up, guys. So I'm gonna pop out of this so I can see this full screen and you guys can see this full screen, okay? Basically, what we got here is a little rundown, and I want to focus on this top part right here, okay? 3 elements to consider. And again, obviously, this is talking about first appearance in comic books. 3 elements to consider, guys. So what I believe, or you, that's the individual, right? It's what the collective believes. That is basically the market. And when I mean the market, I mean us as collectors as a whole are basically our purchasing trends and our buying power, right? And then lastly, it's what the industry labels. So again, let me repeat that. 3 elements to consider when we're talking about first appearances in comic books. What I believe, or you believe, what the collective believes, and what the industry labels. Okay? Let's talk about that for a little bit here. All right. What that means is we all can have opinions on things, right? Like I just said in the intro, I just said, hey, I don't like the way that the comic book industry utilizes first appearance terms. I would have never used cameo. And I think anytime a person shows up, you can see his face or they say their name or whatever, you know who it is. Uh, that's the first appearance, period. And you can add details around that. Cameo is a wrong word. You could say, what did I say in my other video? Like brief is a word, or sneak peek. Here's the first sneak peek, but it's still a first appearance of this character, right? That's what I believe, or you believe as a collector. Basically, at the end of the day, what we believe holds no weight other than how we want to perceive things that impacts how we collect, right? Secondly, is the collective. Now, once we start understanding that there is some weight to what we perceive because it impacts how we collect. And only when our collecting habits unify as a whole and create trends does it then have a bigger, broader impact on the market, inevitably on the industry. Okay. But lastly, it's what the industry labels and dictates. And I talked about this in my other videos. What creates the final say in terms of labels, right, in the comic book community or industry? And it's the chicken or the egg argument. Does the industry dictate and throw labels out there, feed it to us, and then we follow? Or does our perspective dictate, create trends, create market demand, and then the industry labels according to that trend? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? And honestly, over time, it's gone both ways. Okay. So let me bring something up. Let me bring this back up and discuss the next thing here, guys. Um let's see. Okay, so okay, next up we have um this point right here. Guys, what is your name? My name is Data. This is a Star Trek quote or a Star Trek reference right here, guys, and I'm going to explain in a minute. Okay. What this is saying is basically perspective, right? And personal opinion. There is an episode. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Star Trek: The Next Generation, right? And there's the cyborg or android character Data, and in season 2, I believe it's season 2, the Enterprise gets a new doctor on board, right? And she's like introducing herself or calling out Data, and she's like, "Hey, Data," and he's like, "Data? What is Data?" She says, "That's your name, isn't it?" And he says, "My name is Data." And she says, "What's the difference?" And he says, "It's my name." Okay? Basically, what I'm saying here, guys, is it doesn't matter what that doctor believed. It mattered what Data believed to be his name. Why? Because it's his name. What that means is we can believe whatever we want to be. It doesn't make it true. So I can sit here and say, you know what? The industry wants to label Annual 14 as Gambit's first appearance. I disagree, so it's wrong. No, I disagree, but it's still right because the industry says so. Because Marvel says so. Now I'm going to bring some data into this. Data pun right now. I'm going to bring some evidence into this to kind of go along with what I'm saying here. Now, it doesn't mean that my opinion is wrong. My opinion is a valid opinion, but it doesn't change the fact that is ingrained in the industry by those that create the terms. Okay, so let's go. Let's bring up this list again here, guys. Um, now this is kind of the history, I feel, of where the chicken or the egg, what comes first? Like, does our opinion dictate the industry and what the industry labels its books, or does the industry dictate and we follow? So let's focus on this right here. It states, if we simply seek a book because of speculating a first appearance, we allow the industry to dictate the market. Okay, let's look at this. If we simply seek what we feel to be more appealing about one book from another, we allow our purchasing power to dictate the market. Does that make sense? So let me repeat these two things, guys. Let me repeat these two things. If we simply seek a book because of speculating a first appearance, we allow the industry to dictate the market. On the contrary to that, if we simply seek what we feel to be more appealing about one book from another, we allow our purchasing power and our demand to dictate the market. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? That means this, and I'm going to put it in the context of the world that we live in. And let me do that by bringing up the Overstreet Price Guide, okay? I got the Overstreet Price Guide, and bear with me, guys. I need reading. I should have brought my reading glasses out here. But right here, and I don't know if you guys will be able to see this, but I'm on Wolverine, or I'm on Hulk. You guys can see here. I'm on Hulk here, and I don't know if you guys can see this right down here. I'll show it on screen. But it says there under 180. 180 is Wolverine's brief appearance. Okay? And it says that 181, what's the terminology used for 181 by Overstreet? It says it is first full Wolverine appearance. Okay? Now, check this out. This is a Wolverine card produced by Marvel. Now, Marvel use whether they use Skybox or one of the they use basically a card manufacturing company. But these were trademarked and issued by Marvel. It's Marvel content. Marvel created all the content that's on this. So therefore, it's coming from the creator within the industry. It's not a third party. And it has Wolverine's first appearance as Hulk 180. It doesn't say cameo. It doesn't say brief. It says first appearance, Incredible Hulk 180. Let me put this into context real quick. Let me put this into context. To those two things that I showed you, and I'm going to bring it up one more time. Let's read the second one first again. Right here. If we simply seek what we feel to be more appealing about one book from another, we allow our purchasing power to dictate the market. Okay. I wasn't around in the 70s, okay? But I'm going to hypothetically state what I believe happened in 1974. Like what? October, November 1974, when Hulk 180 hit the shelves, right? And you got, Hulk's been around for over a decade now, and you got young kids and probably at this point teenagers and even young adults and who knows how old. You got a lot of people going out buying Hulk comic books, right? And they get this book, it's Hulk 180, they buy it off the spinner rack, or they go to a local comic book shop, buy it off the shelf, and they go home and they read this, and they turn to this last page, and boom, here is this brand new character. Like, whoa, this guy looks awesome. He's got claws. He's sick. Wow, what? To be continued? Oh, shoot. I can't wait till next month. I'm going to go buy that new Hulk next month because I want to know what's happening with this character. Who is this guy? Is he a villain? Is he a hero? Is he going to destroy Hulk? Like, what's happening? This is freaking awesome, right? So you sit around for a month, and then all that hype builds. All the friends, oh, guys, did you get the new Hulk 180 book? There's this new character at the end of the book. Like, man, I can't wait for the next issue to see what happens. Nobody went out and told these kids and young adults or whatever, hey, guys, there is a book. Nobody told them like 3 months in advance that there's a book coming out. The only advance now there is what the the ad. There's the ad in some of the Marvel books that said Hulk, and I don't recall if it actually stated Hulk 181. But so there was a little bit of anticipation. But again, it's more of, oh, who's this new character, right? So I'm sure a lot of kids, word of mouth, were telling other kids. A lot of the reason why the demand for Hulk 181 from the beginning was higher than Hulk 180 was because of what we demanded. And it had nothing to do with what the industry coined as first appearance, right? Now let's flip that around. Let's flip that around and go back to the first thing I stated. Okay. I stated, if we simply seek a book because of speculating a first appearance, we allow the industry to dictate the market. So now, shoot, let me put that in context again. That means, let's just say hypothetically, Hulk 180 and 181 came out today. Okay. We live in a completely different world. Okay. We have mass media through print, through social media, through the internet that is pumping out information at the snap of a finger. It's instantaneous information. If Hulk 180 and Hulk 181 came out today and there was no Wolverine, we would demand Hulk 180 more than Hulk 181 simply because we would have had speculation on somebody's first appearance because we knew he was going to show up in Hulk 180. We wouldn't care. We wouldn't care that he was only on one page. We wouldn't care that he only had two bubbles, two speaking bubbles, and in one, like half a page appearance. We wouldn't care. All that we would know is that this new character named Wolverine is going to show up in Hulk 180, and it would be sold out before its release date. It would be freaking a hot item, and it would demand more. It would control more demand from the market than Hulk 181, which would push its value up. We saw that with Amazing Spider-Man with the Red Goblin. But the problem was so much information was out there, we didn't know which book was what. They wouldn't say which one his first appearance were. They were like dropping hints. So ultimately, what, 798 was the hot book first, and then it was then 798 dropped back down to like a cover price book, and then 799 shot up, but then it was 800. So then but then it was like 799. So it's like all we cared about was what the industry coined as a first appearance. We didn't care about anything else. We didn't. Now, I'm not saying that that's wrong. Hey, look, collectors are wanting to speculate, and they want the industry to dictate to them. Look, I'm not saying that's wrong. That's you. That's how you want to collect. That's how a lot of people collect. That's fine, but it has repercussions. Everything has a cause and effect. So do you guys kind of see what I'm saying? I'm going to go through some comments before I continue on, but I hope that you guys are kind of seeing a little bit of what I'm trying to dive into right now. There's two scenarios. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Sometimes we demand our demand on the market influences the industry and what the industry labels, but sometimes it's the other way around. And more so today than not, what the industry dictates their labels as, we follow. In the olden days, it used to be a lot more the opposite. Let me look through some comments real quick, and then I'm going to continue on to my next point. We got a lot of stuff going down. We got Strange X Blade talking about purchasing power, which I kind of addressed. Yeah. Michael, I don't really about Fantastic Four #2 about the first appearance of the Skrulls. I'm not too keen on if there's any controversy around that. Oh, Strange Blade. Okay, Strange Blade. I'm gonna get into this. Let's see what you wrote first, though. If the collectors decide to roll with Batman 92 over Hell Horizon 3, the industry responds to what we dictate, especially third-party companies like the Grand. Okay, this is something I'm going to get into. I don't really want to talk about it now, but this is a situation where, even though what I just said, right, and age where the industry dictates to us and we kind of follow. But because everything moves so fast and is so instantaneous, collectively, we have more power now to dictate back to the industry than we did in years past too. It goes both ways. And this is a perfect example. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute. So we're going to hold on to that. Simon says, are those who create the terms correct, even if they go against human logic? As the first time we see Gambit is in the page. I'm going to, Simon, ultimately, yes. Ultimately, yes. I would say it's kind of like this. I don't know if this is a good example or a good metaphor, but what's that? No, I mean, innocent until proven guilty. Maybe is an example. Somebody commit a crime, but if there's no evidence, it's not going to change. I don't know if that's a good example, but to talk to your point, ultimately the creators are correct because they create it and they make the statements, right? And I go back to the Star Trek example. Hey, somebody calling data, and him saying, Data, what's Data? And she's saying, isn't that your name? No, my name's Data. And she says, what's the difference? She says, it's not, he said, it's not my name. So that individual can keep calling. We know that the word data can be pronounced data and data. But Data's name is Data, right? Like, how many of you have seen names that are just like ridiculously spelled? And they're like, oh, what was the name? There was somebody's name that was like Siobhan. But the name was spelled like B X S V. Like, I'm telling you, like, I'm like, how is this name Siobhan? Like, please tell me. And that's my name, right? I mean, we see that with names where it's like, I don't know what you made up here, right? You made that up, you pulled it out of your, it's like, but hey, if that's what it is, that's what it is. The same with this. If Marvel makes a book and says that this is the first appearance and the industry grabs onto that label, it doesn't matter if it's wrong. That's the label. I'm not saying that it can't change and we can't correct them and fight against what we feel to be incorrect. Yes, we can in multiple ways. I'm going to get more to that in a minute. And ultimately, I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate for standing up against the industry and pushing back against these terms. Believe me. So I don't want anybody watching to think that like I'm shooting all you down, because I said at the beginning of this video, I said in my videos that I published this week, I agree that Annual 14 should be declared Gambit's first appearance, period. Well, without cameo. Maybe you could put a brief, maybe you could put guest appearance, whatever it is, and then you could say full cover or full story, but it shouldn't say first anymore necessarily. I mean, it really comes down to all the little details, right? It's tough. So I'm an advocate for having more consistency and proper terminology, but we are where we're at right now. Let's get back to that in a minute. The industry does respond to demand. If X-Men Annual 14 is the first appearance of Gambit, regardless of the label, the industry would respond to it. Okay, now let me explain something here. That has to do with when the book was released in so many ways. We're going to get back to that, guys. I'm going to hold off on some more of these comments, guys. So let me pull this back up because I had this organized. I want to stay on track here. Okay. Next here, we're gonna look at this and look at this example that I used. Ultimately, Hulk 181 is more. I already talked about that. Hulk 181 being more valuable because of demand, right? So I already talked about that. But let's go into this right here. And this goes to what the comment that I just pulled up. Today, collectors speculate on the title given to the book by the industry more so than the content of the pages. or the appeal of the cover. If DC announced Batman 89 as Punchline's first appearance instead of cameo, it would have demanded a higher value than Batman 92. It had nothing to do with how many pages the character was on in either book. So I addressed this already too, and this is me using Punchline's controversy as an example. It's all about what the industry stated. But the problem here that's allowed us as consumers to have more power is that it was confusing and they weren't stern on it. They came out initially saying 92 is the first appearance, right? Get ready for this new character. You're going to see him. You're going to see her in Batman 92. So everyone said, this is the book. We're going to get this book. We're going to pre-order the book. But then the creator said, you know what? I want this book to show up first, though. So let's like have him in the background in a game, like in a couple panels of what is it? Hell Risen, right? But then he was like, shoot, you know, what was it like? He didn't, but that was so different than being tied into the storyline, the Joker War storyline, that he was like, well, let's do another cameo appearance that comes out before that in Batman 89. So the only reason why our demand was taken away from Batman 92 was because so much changed, and because of social media, we as consumers knew that it all changed, because that's where we put our foot down and said, okay, look, what is it? We demand what is the first appearance. But, and I'm going to tell you again, it doesn't matter how many pages the character shows up on if the industry still dictates what their first official appearance is. But we know now, we as consumers know that the industry dictates a cameo and a first full. And what's going to happen with this book, I guarantee it, the Hell Risen and the 89, Batman 89, are both going to be seen as cameos. And there's been other characters out there that have had multiple cameos. Mary Jane ultimately had 2 first cameos and then a first full appearance. Okay, there's some other ones I can't think off the top of my head. Ultimately, though, if none of that was published, on social media, and there was no instantaneous information being out there for us, we would have sat on 92 no matter what until, you know, like unless 89 came out. And because we know the industry standard and we saw this character like throughout the book, then we might have questioned it again and say, industry, look. But if the industry never changed what it was, we would slowly move away from advocating for 89 and still hop back on to 92. And that's what is so important about understanding the Gambit controversy. Let me repeat that again. If the information that we got surrounding Punchline had only to do with Batman 92, and we saw Punchline in Batman 89 just because we're picking up the book, and that character's on a decent amount of pages, and we're like, wait a minute, this looks like a first full appearance. But then the industry says, no, Batman 92 is. Doesn't matter what you think about 89, Batman 92 is. Guess what? Our pushback against the industry would slowly dissipate, and we would continue to ride the 92 bandwagon. Maybe not you as an individual, maybe not me as an individual collector. Maybe there's some of us that wouldn't. I know there's a lot of us that wouldn't, but the majority would continue to ride the bandwagon of what the industry labels. I guarantee it. And this is why the annual X-Men 14 and 266 controversy is important, and I'm going to explain why right now. Okay. Annual X-Men 14 came out in January of 1990. It's over 30 years ago. Uncanny X-Men 266 came out in August of 1990, almost 30 years ago. 7 to 8 months in between these two books, right? Now, ultimately, there was no internet back then. There was no internet. You know, we had Overstreet. You know, we had industry publications and whatnot. But there a lot of and obviously speculation's been around for a long time. Speculation was more heavy in the early 90s. You know, that's where, you know, me being a kid, I was speculating, you know, speculating was big. So now, don't get me wrong, I don't know, I can't sit here and act like I have all the answers about all the details once annual X-Men 14 came out, like, but I'm sure when you're reading through annual X-Men 14 and you see, that for a guy named Gambit, and you see this character and you see them saying, oh yeah, that's interesting for a guy named whatever the dialogue is in the book, right? You might be like, oh, who is this? Is this a new X-Men? You see him on a couple other pages in the background fighting with the X-Men. You're like, who is this character? You couldn't Google at that point. There was nothing, you could probably write in a letter to Marvel and be like, hey, who was that character in the annual 14 book? But that probably wouldn't even get answered or published if it got published until after X-Men 266 came out, right? You might go talk to your LCS owners back then, like, hey, look, this character, like, who is this? So just like I said about Hulk 180, there could have been like not necessarily speculation, but just anticipation to seeing when are we going to see this new character. So you might be buying the books off the shelf, the new, you know, here comes X-Men 262. He's not in there. Here's X-Men 263. I don't see him in there. Here's X-Men 264. I don't see him. Wow, are we ever going to see this character again? That could have been happening. I don't really know. I don't know. But ultimately, what I do know is when that character hit the cover of 266 and it hit the shelves, it started flying off. And I'm going to show you guys. Here's an X-Men card. Okay? And there's the other ones for the actual full-on Marvel series that has a Gambit card after his first year from 91, and it says the same thing on the back. First appearance, Uncanny X-Men 266. Okay. Basically, and that's Marvel. Marvel publishes those cards. That is coming from the mouth of the father who dictates the labels, right? Not a third party. That's from Marvel. That tells me that regardless of what happened in annual 14 and regardless of what collectors thought back then, from the get, Marvel and the industry was declaring Uncanny X-Men 266 as Gambit's first official appearance. Period. Now, I'm sure there were people that questioned that even back then. We didn't have the instantaneous information. We didn't have social media. Our voice as a collective unit wasn't as powerful back then outside of our purchasing power. So back then, all that was based upon our power to say which book was more valuable was that we were buying Uncanny X-Men 266 way more than we were buying Annual 14. And ultimately, it didn't necessarily have to do with what we thought was the first appearance. It's just because we wanted that book. Maybe it's because we saw the character on the cover. Maybe because he was new. You know, maybe some people didn't know about Annual 14. Who knows? It doesn't matter, though, in the bigger scheme of things, because the industry coined Uncanny 266 from the get as Gambit's first appearance. So fast forward 30 years later, right? And this is why it doesn't matter what we think. If these books came out today, Annual 14 and 266, if they came out today, it would be the same situation that I told you if the Hulk books came out today, 180 and 181, and it'd be the same situation for what DC is going through right now with Punchline. If all we knew about Gambit was that we saw him in this annual. We know nowadays how the industry coins appearances. We know, most of us know, we're smarter, whether we agree with it or not. We as collectors know that the industry will coin cameo appearances and first full appearances. We know that. So if we saw Gambit in 2020 in a brand new book for the first time, and he was on basically one page talking and another page in the background and a few other pages in the background fighting, we would sit there and we would say, hey, who's this new character? Is this his first appearance? If the industry said, yes, this is his first appearance, and then 6 or 7 months later, 266 came out, which book would be more valuable? Annual 14. Hands down. Hands down. Hands down. If the industry dictated still that, no, there's this book coming out in a few months where he's going to be on the cover, and that's going to be considered his first full appearance. Again, we might argue, say, no, no, no. Look at this book. I don't know. I understand what you guys say about cameos, but I don't know, industry. We may be able to put pressure on the industry. And maybe before the release of 266, the industry might say, hey, look, there's a lot of pressure. Maybe we need to change it before this book comes out and call it his second appearance, or we're going to call this book his first full. At that point in time, what would still be more valuable? The annual. But at that point in time, if the industry still said, nope, I don't care what you think, you can say that we're wrong, Uncanny X-Men 266 would still be more valuable in today's market if it was released today, period. That's because ultimately there's so many collectors right now that manipulate the market and affect the market and dictate by their demand, by speculating, not really what's in the context of the book, but what the industry is labeling them. Now, let's look at it from this scenario. These books didn't come out today. They came out 30 years ago. It is incorrect to say, according to the industry, that Gambit's first appearance is not 266. It's been that way since day one. And here's how I'm going to go about saying this, guys. If you were a comic book owner, let me get some water. I know I'm going on. I'm going to get to some comics in a minute after I say this piece. If you were a comic book owner, right, and you got some books in and you had a couple annual X-Men annual 14s, or one or two, I don't care how many, and you got a couple, one or two, whatever, Uncanny X-Men 266. If you were a comic book owner and you got these books in and you decided to say, you know what, screw what Marvel says, screw what Overstreet says, screw what Go Collect and CGC and CBCS and all that the industry insiders say, I'm going to say what I want to say because it's what I believe. My name's Data. No, I'm going to call you Data. So you change, right? You change it. And you put on your eBay store, you put on your website, and you put on your wall book in your store. And you say, here's what's that book on your wall? Can you get it for me? Oh, yeah. Collector comes in. Oh, yeah. Check this book out. Oh, wow. This looks like a cool book. I'm not familiar with it. What is it? Oh, it's Gambit's first appearance. Right there, you're wrong, because that individual that doesn't know is getting duped due to the market, due to what the industry labels these books. Or if you were to say, have a label here that said, this is Gambit's first appearance, and you get collectors that know what they're doing and they go in there, that's not Gambit's first appearance. And you got 266. Say you label 266 first Gambit cover, or you don't label it at all, right? And you say, no, that 266, that's nothing. I mean, he's on the cover. It's the first time we see him on the cover, but no, this is his first appearance. You know what that's going to do to you as a comic book owner? First off, you're probably not going to have a good chance of selling your books. I don't know if you're going to manipulate the price of your book because in your head, you believe that this book should be more valuable because it's the first appearance. I don't know. But if you are stating as a comic book owner that Uncanny X-Men 266 has nothing to do with Gambit's first appearance, and this book is his true first appearance, and anything else is a lie, that's bad business. You're alienating your customer base, and ultimately that's a bad business model that's going to subjectify you to bad customer rapport. Okay? Hands down. Hands down. And you can't argue that no matter what you believe. If people are searching for Gambit and the book that means something, that because of its value, they're going to be searching Gambit's first appearance no matter what they believe. If I'm going on eBay or I'm calling up a store and I say, or I'm putting in the search engine, I'm not going, and I know I want Uncanny X-Men 266 merely because of its demand and its value. I'm not going to search for, I'm not going to say, oh man, I'm sorry guys. Basically, when I call a store and say, or I don't expect this book to populate, right? When I call a store asking for that money book, I don't expect them to say, no, it's not that. This is his first appearance. I don't care what you think. You're wrong. You're lying. So it's engraved in stone, and it's been that way for 30 years. That's why what started this whole this conversation for me on my channel earlier in the week, I did a video talking about how to sell your comic books. And I said, take example, Uncanny 14, Annual 14, cameo of first cameo of Gambit. That's what I said. And I was talking about how even though, you know, you could probably sell that book if it's near mint, you can probably sell it for a good 25, 30, 35 bucks. If you sell it to LCS, they might give you $5 for it. And I was told that I'm wrong and I'm lying. And let me say this before I go any further, guys. I meant to say this at the beginning of my video. I love healthy debates and arguments. And when I say argument, I mean argumentation. I don't mean argument. It is yelling at each other and pointing fingers at each other. Especially when talking comics in a hobby that we all love so much. I think it's good. We can get into it. We can get, we can put all that into it, right? But once a playful and a fun argument turns into belittling or antagonizing and basically arguing just to argue and not understanding like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I agree with this, but I might agree with you on that, but I still disagree with this, but that's okay. Yeah, awesome conversation. This was fun. When it gets past that, guys, it takes all the fun out of it and it's not worth it. And it's so negative and it's so energy draining. And we should never allow any personal opinion or even if we think we're arguing facts, we should never allow a peaceful, fun argument, especially about comic books and pop culture, allow us to get to a place where we're pointing, shaming somebody and antagonizing them. Never. So I just wanted to make that clear with you all. But let's go into some comments here. So we were talking about industry responding, man, but sometimes consumers respond to industry, chicken or the egg. What comes first? Let's see what we got. All right, let's see. Let me see if there's just any comments that are relevant to what we just went over, guys, and then I'll continue on here. Mike is talking about how were you? So I think Mike was around there then, right, in the 70s. He's just talking about like Wolverine. There wasn't that much popularity even when the books came out. I'm sure there's at least some with kids that are saying, "Who's this new character?" I know I've heard people that were around then saying that they wanted to go, and then they saw him on the cover and they're like, wow, who's this guy with these awesome claws? So that means something to at least some collectors back then. But you're saying they're sitting on racks for weeks. Nobody really cared about Wolverine when he first came out. It was the whole collectors that bought the Wolverine issues. Well, again, Mike, I think, there's probably a lot. Yeah, Hulk, like I said, Hulk had been around, and you got Hulk back then. Hulk is just selling Hulk issues for sure, but I'm sure there was those people that cling to, and I know I did. You see somebody on a cover and you're gonna cling to that. So I don't think that's all of it. I do believe that there's ultimately demand for a character and what's on the pages, and that's what I was talking about. Simon says, "What do your senses tell me?" Ultimately, Simon, and again, and I'll touch back on this. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it doesn't change. It doesn't change what's been sitting for 30 years, especially when we're talking about these two specific books, right? Mike says Wolverine really didn't get noticed until Giant Size X-Men #1, X-Men '94. That's a good point. That's a good point. And I'm wondering if that's because you had Hulk fans and then you had X-Men fans. But then when X-Men fans were like, "Oh, this character's cool. Where have we seen him before?" And you go back, and of course, I think at that point you look at, man, like he was on this cover of Hulk 181. But again, I think even the information you're giving, Mike, shows that it was more of an inherent idealism of what we love as comic collectors that was dictating what we went and bought and what drove value. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have all of these industry sources speculating and throwing that at us instantaneously. We more just demanded what we felt we loved and what was cool and what popped out and caught our attention. Doc Cop, thanks for joining us. Um, JJ says it is in Marvel's interest to label some of the bigger books first appearances. You mean older books? Now, okay. This is actually, I think this comment is a great segue, JJW. I appreciate this because I think what JJ is talking about is ultimately older books. Because I'm gonna show you guys something again. I'm gonna bring this up. Now, I wasn't around in the 70s, right? And I was a young kid in the 80s collecting, and I didn't have the know-it-all back then either. And I don't have the know-it-all now about what was going on back then. But I've heard collectors say that the term cameo was thrown around probably since the 70s. But to what extent, we don't know, right? We don't really know. And we also know that there's no clear definition of cameo, but we're going to get into that in a minute here. But JJ says it's in Marvel's interest to label some of the bigger books first appearance. That brings me to something, guys. Brings me back to this card. And on every Wolverine card in the early 90s, what's it say right there? Right there. First appearance, Hulk 180. Now, at that time, because I was just looking at a price guide, I believe Hulk 181 was worth maybe, I think it was like $85 in around 1990, 1991. I think it was worth about $85, okay? It was still a more valuable book than Hulk 180. Even though Marvel themselves in the early 90s was still stating that Hulk 180 was the first appearance. So even back then in the 90s, even in the 90s, Marvel wasn't really hopping on the cameo bandwagon, and they weren't hopping on the bandwagon of labeling a book a first appearance just because it's the bigger book. But what changed? First and foremost, the internet. The internet changed everything. Few years, or some 6 years later after the internet, what changed again? Grading companies. CGC. 2000, you get CGC coming in. What happened with the birth of the internet and with the birth of new ways of solidifying quality and industry standard, right? Or the idea of what the graded encapsulated, because it's not really encapsulated. The grading standards and the certifications that came in with your comic books, those things got big due to the internet and due to companies like CGC, and it started to matter more. And I think when this stuff started happening, your industry as a whole, but specifically speaking of the publishers themselves, said, we need to buckle down. We need to buckle down on our terminology and strictly define them. And that's where, even though Cameo may have been around here and there since the 70s, I don't think it really took effect until the 90s, and then specifically into the new millennium. Now, I'm going to bring something up here on screen, guys, because I showed this in my video as well. I'm going to bring this up here. It's from Go Collect. Okay. Let me bring this on screen. Go Collect, Go Collect. Sorry, guys, give me 1 second. Here we go. Okay, we're going to bring this up on screen here. Oh, shoot. 1 second. I apologize, guys. All right, here it is. Now, what does this say? It talks about the Cameo and the first appearance. Okay, let's read through this. The first Cameo appearance is essential in a character's background, but not the most expensive. The Cameo is the characters appearing on only a few panels, or even just one panel in the interior pages. Basically, the Cameo is a very limited intro of the character, a teaser. Every Cameo is usually cheaper, and I'm not going to get into the values, and they talk about that. They define the first appearance, stating that defining the first full appearance is tough. Some apps help. Essentially, the first full appearance is a full story on the character, with the character appearing in multiple panels and multiple pages. Now, this excerpt from Go Collect was in an article about the controversy between Gambit's first appearance. And they went on to say that ultimately it is believed that the Gambit controversy is what really pushed Marvel and the industry to start utilizing the term cameo. And that might be because they initially rolled with Uncanny 266 as the first appearance without even acknowledging 14 at all. So maybe they had to look back and say, well, we need to acknowledge Annual 14. Let's really stick with calling the 266 the first appearance, and let's throw that cameo tag. Now, I don't know if this is completely true, how much validity there is to it, but I can see that. Because as we know, they even said when the book was getting hot through 1991 and 1993, there was a lot of pressure on Marvel to coin those two books properly. But we know on these cards that even in the early 90s, when the book was just coming out, they weren't using, Marvel specifically wasn't using the term cameo whatsoever. On these cards, it says that ASM 299 is the first appearance of Venom. On these cards, it says Fantastic Four 48 is the first appearance of Galactus, not cameo. It says Avengers 195 is the first appearance of Taskmaster, not cameo. So there is evidence that the term cameo, even though it may have been around for a while longer, It wasn't widely recognized or used by the industry, at least until the mid-90s. Now, I'm going to pull up Overstreet again. And I'm going to talk about consistency, guys. Okay? I'm going to talk about consistency. Whether we agree with these terms or not, consistency is what matters. That's for books that have been released for 20, 30, 40 years. And that's for new books that are still being released and that haven't been released yet. And how the industry dictates their labels, prior to their release or in previews or at the time of their release. I know you probably can't read it, but I'm going to show you again the term that Overstreet uses for what the industry ultimately coins as cameos. They call them brief. So if you pick up any Overstreet price guide, it's going to call Hulk 180 first brief appearance of Wolverine. It's going to call Hulk 181 first full appearance of Wolverine. It's going to call ASM 299 first brief appearance of Venom, and it's going to call ASM 300 first full appearance. It's going to call, and it's in this book. It states right here in this book. I'll show you. I'll see if you guys can read this. I need to be wearing my glasses, man. I lost where it was. Oh my gosh. I mean, you guys could take my word for it. Overstreet price guide states, because I can't even read the pages on it to even like try to have you guys zoom in on it. My eyes are bad. It says Annual 14 is Gambit's first brief appearance, and it declares Uncanny 266 is Gambit's first full appearance. Now, according to consistency, brief aligns 100% with cameo. Overstreet recognizes it. Marvel and DC recognize it. CGC, CBCS, they recognize it. Even your Go Collect, comicbook.com, Comic Book Realm, comic book, the one that actually Isaac referred me to, which I have up on my screen, Comic Book Investing Company. Every industry publication or entity recognizes the terms cameo and full appearance. Some just use brief. It means the same thing, though, according to the industry. By textbook definition, no, they don't mean the same thing, but by industry, they do. Let me pull up this statement here, guys, and I'm going to read this to you. Actually, I went through everything. I went through everything in this printout that I did. All right, so let's talk about a little more, and I talked about it in this in my video. I'm going to bring this up here, guys. Let's bring this on screen, and let's move this around here. Let me show you guys. Okay, so as you can see on screen, this is a CGC Annual 14. It says first, or cameo of Gambit, right? Here's 266. Let's zoom in. First appearance of Gambit. Oh, excuse me. First full appearance of Gambit, right? Let's go back to, I want to zoom in on this for you guys. You guys see it right there? Gambit cameo predates Uncanny X-Men 266. All right. One other argument that's been being stated is that they're wrong because it's not a cameo. He appears on so many pages and he has so many lines and he's so much in the book. That's inaccurate. That is inaccurate. The argument is this, guys. How often you see Gambit in this book right here is more similar to what is defined as a cameo than what is defined as a full appearance, okay? And let me try to show you guys. This page right here is the first time that we see Gambit, okay? Okay. We don't see him in the first panel. We see him right here. Here's one panel. They say the name. A man who dresses as you do and calls himself Gambit. Boom. There's his name. We have a face, even though he's in the shadow. And what do you see? Him talking. One panel. He's talking. Two panels, talking. Three panels, we see his back talking. We don't see him here. Yeah, we do. Four panels talking. And then I believe that's it on the page. Oh, no, we see his back. He's in 5 panels of this page, right? And that's the last of him talking. Okay. We do see him on a handful of other pages, but outside of that first page, the most that we see him is right here, just standing in the background, hanging out in a group. Okay, he's not doing anything. Every time we see him after that, you know how in the old days the backgrounds used to be like grayed out? They would use like a blue color or a gray color, and to tell you that that's the shadow and they're in the background. Like every other time we see him, he's grayed out. He's not talking, and he's fighting in a group of like 20 people. He has dialogue on one page of a 64 page book. He has one page of dialogue. Okay. Venom appears in 2 pages of X-Men, ASM 299. Venom appears in 2 pages and he talks in both of those pages. And it's considered a cameo. This is obviously not a full appearance according to the industry. So what is it then? The only other coined term that you can call it is a cameo, because it's more close to a cameo than it is a full appearance. Now, I don't know all the books out there, guys. Believe me, I'm not a walking encyclopedia. But one example that could be used to argue against this is Avengers Annual number 10, the first appearance of Rogue. You could say, well, Rogue wasn't on that cover. And Rogue was, I mean, you know, she was a big part of the story, but she was only in, I think, 11 pages, right? I think she was in 11 pages of that book. 11 pages is still more. And on each page that she was on, she was in almost every panel. Besides one page in this book, Gambit appeared on like one panel of each other page that he's on, and he's in the background. Every page that Rogue was on in Annual 10, she was the main story, the main protagonist, antagonist, and she had dialogue. Honestly, it's completely different. And I think the only reason why that book doesn't have more value is because she's not on the cover. Boy, if that book had a cover of her fighting Carol Danvers, wow, that would be an amazing book. So that's one example of, you know, where, like, look, there is a huge differentiation still why that's a true first appearance. And now keep this in mind, and I want to talk about this, guys. Rogue's first appearance isn't called a cameo or a full, and I talked about this in one of my videos. It's called a first appearance. And the reason why is because the industry only recognizes a full appearance when there's a cameo that precedes it. Okay? If you have books like this, the first appearance of Gwen Stacy, what does it say? And this goes for Overstreet. It goes for CGC. It goes for CBCS. It goes for all the online indexes. First appearance of Gwen Stacy. There's no cameo. There's no full, because it is a true first appearance. It is a full first appearance, but it wasn't preceded by a cameo. Okay? Another one, Cloak and Dagger. Origin, yes, but then it says, and first appearance of Cloak and Dagger. It doesn't say full. It doesn't say cameo. But it is a full first appearance, but it wasn't preceded by a cameo. So, but then you have Taskmaster, right? Here's another example. First full appearance, 196. Why? Because 195 was a cameo. One thing that I will say, guys, I do not like the term cameo. I do not like the term cameo at all being used for anything first appearance. But you cannot argue that there is consistency. And I'm sorry, I believe that calling Uncanny X-Men Annual 14 a cameo of Gambit is more accurate than calling it a full, according to the consistent guidelines of the industry. Marvel, grading companies, Overstreet, and so forth. So, we circle back 360, guys. We circle back 360. It doesn't matter what I believe, especially for books that have been out for 30, 40 plus years. Like JJ's comment, it is in Marvel's interest to label some of the bigger books first appearance. I think the reason why they came up with the cameo for the older books is because they wanted a clear definition that defined the money books. And the money books tend to be those where you see a character and the whole story, much more than just a few pages or a few panels, but they're in the whole story, and more than likely they're on the cover. So, let's go through some comments, because that was a lot. Doc Cop says, Conan, 23 and 24, great debate of Red Sonja. I'm familiar. I know that the Red Sonja's first questionable appearance. I don't know what. So 23 is considered the cameo. 24 is considered full. I don't know what they look like. I never read the books, or I couldn't count how many panels she shows up on in 23. But I'm going to look into that. JJ says people have a lot of money invested in books like Hulk 181 and have been hoarding them. So it's very temperamental about that issue. Yeah, and here's the thing too, guys. Listen. I talk about this in my video. If the industry decided to say now that it's been changed and there's been a industry standard for at least 20 plus years, right? There has. And again, you want to argue with me? Look, the Overstreet, Marvel Publications, the grading companies, everyone in the industry that has power in the industry. There's been consistent standards and labels set for at least 20 plus years. If Marvel decided to say to the industry and have influence over the entire industry, the indexes, the grading companies, and say, you know what? We understand that cameo is kind of this crazy term. It's a loose term that doesn't really fit a first of anything. We're going to drop it, and we're just going to call it first appearance. That would negatively affect books like Hulk 181. And they're not going to do that. The industry is not going to allow it. And why would us as collectors allow it at this point? Seriously. As much as I hate the term, and if I owned a Hulk 181, would I want to go out there and scream and shout and create a protest to say, this book shouldn't be called his first appearance? Why? Why would I do that? But when it comes to books that haven't been released yet, modern books, yes. We need to hold the publishers and the industry accountable for labeling them right. They set precedent. Even though we don't like some of the terms they've set a precedent with them, let's hold on to those precedents. Punchline. Okay, you guys didn't know when she was going to appear first. You announced it in 92 as her first full. You better stick with that and label 89 and Hellrisen #3 as cameos only. You better stick with that. Because if you change it, it's going to dupe the market and flip things upside down. Stay consistent. Okay, so Simon says, not asking what the industry dictates, asking what do your senses tell you. Well, again, here's the thing, Simon. Like, I do believe there's need to be more detail than the first appearance. I believe it matters. And I think what proves that it matters is before the age of instantaneous information, there was demand for books for other reasons than just their first appearance. Like Mike Sear said, once you saw Giant Size X-Men, people went back and grabbed Hulk 181 because it was more identifiable, excuse me. It was more identifiable to this new character, Wolverine, than Hulk 180 was. He wasn't even in the story. He was just in the back of the book. What does that mean to me as somebody who wants to get to know this new character? Ultimately, nothing. So I'm going to go buy Hulk 181 because I just bought this X-Men book and I'm really enjoying this new X-Men character. Ultimately, it matters, though, because calling it a first isn't all of the weight that we should put onto these books. So as much as I think this is what my senses tell me, the industry should have never used the term cameo. Never. And I'm going to show you guys why. Again, I'm going to show you guys why. This is the Merriam-Webster definition of cameo. A small character part in a play, movie, or story, played by a distinguished actor or celebrity, broadly a brief appearance or role. The best example I have, Stan Lee cameos. Stan Lee cameos were only cameos because we knew who Stan Lee was. By definition, a cameo cannot be new. It cannot be somebody that we don't know. They have to be recognizable. They have to be distinguished. So ultimately, the industry should have never used the term cameo. I like what Overstreet calls it. First brief appearance to first full appearance. I do believe that matters. I believe the details matter. First cover appearance matters. You could say first full story. I think that matters too. You could say first full appearance in story. And you could say first sneak peek or first brief appearance. I think all of those are valid. And I think that would help dictate the market still. But look, let's get over the word. Let's get over the word cameo. Let's get over it. Let's just pretend they mean brief, because that's what they mean ultimately. They changed the definition of that word in the context of the comic book industry. And hey, let it be, right? Let it be. But now the question is, what defines a cameo then? If we could decipher through all that, what defines cameo? And that's where we should demand more transparency from the industry. We should demand it from Marvel, from DC, from Image, from all the publishers. We should demand it from Overstreet. We should demand it from CGC and CBCS. We should demand it from publications like Go Collect and comicbook.com and CBR and all these people that are powerful voices in the industry. We need to have a demanded concrete definition of what equates to a cameo. Is it 3 or 4 panels, period, no more? Anything past that makes it a full appearance. Should it be 3 to 4 pages with talking on every page, no less, or no more? Or excuse me, no more, sorry. Otherwise, it makes it a full appearance. We don't have that. And that's where an individual even tried to argue with me, saying that these people say it's 1 to 2, no more. No, Nobody has said, nobody, not Marvel, not DC, not CGC, not Overstreet, not freaking anybody has ever said, you need to have this many talking points and this many panels or pages. No more. So to sit here and say that Gambit in Annual 14 is not a cameo because there's too many panels is wrong, because nobody ever told us what's the max for a cameo. Nobody. And that's why, without that clear definition, Gambit's appearance in Annual number 14 is way more similar to what we see defined as a cameo appearance or a brief appearance than what we see defined as a full in terms of consistency. It aligns so much more with precedent of what a cameo or brief appearance means. Let's get into some more comments. Doc Cop, not relevant to what we're talking about, but relevant to community sharing. I'm going to put you on blast. Absolutely, Doc. I don't know if you could share the link to your channel in the comments. I don't know if they'll disable it, but feel free to share your link to your channel, man. If you're not subscribed to me, subscribe to me, and I'll go subscribe to you. And let's definitely check out Doc Cop. I always tell everyone to sub everyone up in the comments and spread the love. Absolutely. So yeah, thanks for letting us know. We're definitely going to check you out for sure. JJ says some of these labels are misnomers for sure. There should be only first appearance and that's it, but they create all these labels to further monitor. Well, we can kind of maneuver around this statement, JJ. Ultimately, I do agree with you, but I think that maneuvering, like I just said, is kind of needed because there's something about a Hulk 181 book than a Hulk 180. There is. When you see a new character, even though we saw him once before, right, in Hulk 180, when you see a new character on a cover and he's in that whole story and it's an awesome story, it's going to mean more to certain collectors than a first appearance and a back page of another book means. But to other collectors, that first appearance, even though it's just a back page, is going to mean more. So I think it really all depends on the collector. And yeah, I think they're maneuvering, looking at monetary reasonings. Absolutely. But I do understand wanting to add details. But that if you're going to add details, it has to be consistent. And it has to make sense, man. The whole cameo thing doesn't make sense. But we have to accept what they mean by cameo. Let's just pretend it's a slang word, right? That they just created their own definition for. Monk's Den says, what do you follow then? CGC, CBCS? They use their own discretion for first appearance. Is there a standard? Look at the whole Adam Warlock issue. CBCS labels his first appearance differently than CGC. Okay. Are you asking me if CBCS labels his first appearance differently than CGC? Or are you stating that? Basically this. Okay, let's do this. Okay, we're going to look at oh, I'll be right back. I'm just right here, guys. Okay. So, I think CGC is extremely consistent. And this goes to show how all the details didn't matter as much until the internet and until grading companies. In the early 90s, do you know what Marvel themselves declared Adam Warlock's first appearance to be? Guess. Fantastic Four 66. In 1990, 1991, Marvel themselves still declared Adam Warlock's first appearance to be Fantastic Four 66. Crazy, right? It goes to show the evolution. And this is where I understand the details. Here is a Thor 165, and let me try to. What do they say here? First appearance of him. In parentheses, Adam Warlock. Okay? Let me show you guys something else. All right. Here is a CBCS Marvel Premiere #1. First time called Warlock. Previously him. So to me, that's consistent. CGC does not state this as the first appearance of Adam Warlock. They don't. They merely put Warlock in parentheses to identify that he later becomes Warlock. So that's consistent. Now, I don't know. Let me, I'll Google. Let's Google a CGC. Where's my phone? What do I do with my phone now? Uh-oh, there it is. Let's Google what CGC says on Marvel Premiere #1, right? Okay. Marvel Premiere #1 CGC. Let's go to some images. Let's try to bring up a CGC book. Boom. Click on that. Click on the image. It's blurry. Oh man, that's too blurry. I can't read it. Shoot, guys. I'm gonna get one here. I'm gonna get one. I promise. Oh, I think this is high res. Yep, here we go. Okay, this is what CGC says on this book, on this exact book. First appearance of him as Adam Warlock. Same thing. So Monk's Den. Like I said, I don't know if you were asking that question or making it as a statement. If you were asking it as a question, there's your answer. CBCS and CGC are 100% consistent. Their wording is a little different, but they're saying the same exact thing. They both say that Thor 165 is the first appearance of him, who later becomes Warlock. And they're both saying that this is the first appearance of him as Adam Warlock, okay? So, and in my research, CBCS and CGC are ultimately extremely consistent because they follow the guidelines set forth by the publishers, okay? And Overstreet. So, and then the other part of the question, what do I follow? I ultimately follow. I mean, that's a tough question because like I follow the market for one. If I want to invest in a book, I follow the market. I don't care what it's called for investment purposes. But for some reason, if I solely want the first appearance of a character, I can weigh that. I can say, well, will I be happy with what the industry considers a cameo, or do I want a first full just because I like that book better? So as a collector that collects for a multitude of reasons and multiple variables, I take in everything. I like to follow what the industry as a whole says. You know, what Overstreet says, what CGC and CBS say. But I like to obviously know what the industry is demanding and the values of the book. But ultimately, I'm going to collect what I like, even if it doesn't have anything to do with value or labels, right? So, hope that answered that question. Mike says you could argue Detective Comics 40 has a full page ad. For the yeah. Well, you know, hey, They did that with Wolverine with the 181 ad, you know. But I mean that's a whole different beast. I just think that's just that's a whole different beast, man. It really is. And hey, if people want to speculate on ads showing a character for the first time before the actual books and stories, hey, and it drives the prices up, hey, that's fine with me. But I think it's completely irrelevant. I don't think we will ever look at ads as a first. Vincent. Okay, let me talk about Go Collect, okay, guys? Because this was one argument that was tried to be used against me, and I'm going to clarify this right now. Okay, Go Collect is a blog. They have industry impact, okay, but ultimately they are a blog. CBR, I would pair CBR and Go Collect extremely similar. When you see Go Collect blog posts, that's what they merely are. They're blogs. And more than that, what you could coin them are opinion pieces. So you know how newspapers have a section that are opinion pieces. You know, normally you might have a local, you know, journalist or somebody that's well known in the community. You know, maybe they're a scientist or a physicist or whatever. But a lot of time, and they might be, you know, full time journalists for a company like New York Times or something like that, and they have opinion piece sections. And what an opinion piece section is, it's not journalism is stating the facts, right? Like um, wildfire in Northern California burned 50 acres, 2 dead. That's journalism. That's facts. Boom. Here's the story. Here's the facts. Right. So ultimately, when we can correlate that with the publishers themselves, what the publishers say the books are basically reporting the facts. They decide. I know it's a little different. I'm not going to get into the details, but that's as close as an analogy as I can use. An opinion piece, though, is when somebody presents an argument that is trying to validate a thesis. So if I was to say, and this is a controversial subject, but I'm not saying I agree with it one way or the other. I'm just using this as a controversial subject. Abortion should be a constitutional right, or it could be the other way around. Abortion should be illegal and it's dangerous. Let's just say that is a statement. It's a thesis statement that I'm making, right? Abortion is bad, but then I would have to argue it and back it up with facts and with data that could prove my argument factual. Same thing. Abortion should be a constitutional right. I state that, and then I present data and some facts surrounding the issue and try to win my argument. That's what an opinion piece is. So Go Collect and CBR and places like that, when you look at their articles and their blogs, they are opinion piece by insiders in the industry. Okay. It's just like insiders in the sports industry having the MJ LeBron debate. MJ's better than LeBron. LeBron's better than MJ. Here's why. Nope. MJ is the GOAT. LeBron will never be close. Here's why. Here's what he did in you know, he won 5 MVPs. He did this. So when industry insiders are ultimately making an argument against a cameo versus a real full appearance, it's a thesis statement of an opinion piece, and they're providing data to back up their statement. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense? So ultimately, when Go Collect says Uncanny 66, now, Vincent, I don't know what context that's in. I don't know if that's in an index and they just listed it like that and it could just be an error, or if it was in an article that they published. But remember, ultimately, that statement right there is stating that it's his first appearance, though. So this statement, even though it's taken out of context, Vincent, because I don't see the whole context of how it was written on their website, that alone states that this is his first appearance and not this, period, right? So I hope that answers that question. Mark Spector Comics asks, the question is, have you opened and read each book? Which books are you talking about? Obviously not these, because they're slab. I have over 16,000 books, and I have read thousands of them, but not as many as I want to. There are books that I will collect that I will never touch. I have reader copies. I have multiple copies of a book. I have 2 X Factor #1s. This one's in Mylar. I've never touched it. Mint condition. I've never touched it. This one's in an old polyethylene bag. I've read it multiple times. So I hope that answers the question. I collect for multiple reasons. I collect to read, but I also collect to collect. I collect for value. I have a speculative side in me as well. Yeah, I have 2 annual 14s. One of them is, they're both in Mylar now. One of them's from when I was a kid. One of them I picked up a couple years ago, and I read one, and the other that I got a couple years ago I never touched. So and to each their own. You don't have to read comic books to collect comic books, and I am not. I've always said this. I'm gonna say it again. There's no right or wrong way to collect comics. I don't like anyone that knocks anyone for doing something that's different than what you do. If somebody wants to collect because they like the art and they never want to touch their books, that is 100% okay and perfectly fine and healthy. Let them do it. If somebody wants to collect because they just like slabbing books, maybe because they like showcasing the art, or maybe they just care about the value, that's perfectly fine. I don't care if you have 10 books in your collection or 10,000. I don't care if you read thousands or never read one. None of those things define what a true collector is. We all collect for our own reasons, period. There is no standard. It's up to the grading companies. Okay. Monk's Den, I actually believe with you because there is no definite, concrete, defined standard. You're right. But there is a standard that's out there that is followed. Okay. But that standard is merely a trend. And yeah, that's not a very transparent standard. It's not. And and that's what we should demand. We got to really, what I believe is, first off, we got to start nitpicking this book. We got to stop it. We got to stop. Look, this is his cameo. It is. And 266 is his first full appearance. It is. But guys, or not guys, but Marvel, industry, everyone involved, get your butts together and document, period, so we can copy verbatim what these standards are, because it's not written. It is nowhere written whatsoever, anywhere. And so, yes, Monk's Den, that's the problem. A standard is followed, but that standard is not clearly defined anywhere. That leaves room for interpretation. It leaves room for error, even though there is a lot of consistency. There is a lot of consistency between CGC, CBCS, Overstreet, online indexes, and Marvel and DC and the publishers. But I agree that that's not enough. It's not enough. There needs to be consistency. CGC says 266's first full appearance. Yes, they do. Vincent, again, I don't know what you're trying to argue. Remember what I said about stating that if it just says first appearance, it means that no cameo preceded it. So it's still a full appearance. But I don't know, and I'm still going through the comments, so maybe you answer my question about provide more context. provide more context to what it was, Go Collect. But again, Go Collect is only one entity, and it is an opinion piece. All right, JJ says, I read the true first appearance in the annual. He's definitely in multiple panels. He speaks in his name. But get this, again, you believe it to be a true appearance because of that? So do I. I agree. But that doesn't make it so. What's your name? Data. Oh, Data. Data? No, that's not my name. My name is Data. Same thing, right? It's not. I said it more verbatim the first time. Venom speaks on 2 different pages. You know his name. In ASM 299. It's a cameo. I believe Taskmaster speaks on 2 different pages because you don't see him, but you see a panel, or do you see like his sword or something? Second to last page, and you see him talking, and maybe I think 2 panels, and then on the last, on the main where he takes up the whole page, he says you're no match for me or whatever, and Taskmaster, he says his name. That's a cameo. 195 of Avengers. Okay, so you reading Annual 14 and understanding that there's multiple panels and he speaks in his name, you believing that to be a true first a true first appearance doesn't mean nothing, because there's consistency in everything you stated and what you see in here, as well as every other book that's defined a cameo, whether we agree or not. So really, there's 2 arguments here. There's what we choose to believe and what we choose to argue against in terms of what is coined within the industry. And that's the differentiation that I'm trying to allow everyone to understand. This book, according to industry standard of a cameo, is indeed a cameo. This book is much more like, it has all the checklists that a cameo does, and it doesn't have the checklist of what a full first appearance has. A full first appearance has basically 2 things. They are a main character in the story, and you see them fully throughout the book. Whether that's seeing them, or that's speech bubbles, or they're related in the story. Gambit had nothing to do with this story. He had absolutely nothing to do with this story. He's helping somebody else out, go down and find something, and then boom, it's done. And then for the rest of the book, after that 1 page, he's in the background helping 20 plus other people fight. This book has nothing to do with Gambit as a story. Avengers Annual 10 has everything to do with Rogue, because it's her origin. About how she gets, well, part of her origin, about how she gets powers from Carol Danvers. It's a big story. Venom showing up has nothing to do with him being in the story at the end of 299, but he speaks on multiple pages in multiple panels. So again, I believe and agree with you, JJ, that this should be considered a true first appearance. But ultimately, by precedent and consistency of the industry, it's a cameo. Isaac says, just buy both books and everyone will be happy. Absolutely. You know, JJ, I kind of agree with you too about 266 being overpriced. But it's not overpriced. It's just like it's an over demand. I don't understand why the demand is so high. But look, it's not technically overpriced, because if it was overpriced, people wouldn't pay for it. If you can go to a store and find an iPhone for $3,000, you wouldn't pay for it. Why? Because you know it's not worth that. If you go to eBay and see a 266 and a 9.4 for $150 or $180, you're probably going to buy it. Why? Because it seems to be worth that, because everyone else is buying it at that price. So it's not overpriced, but I think it is overvalued currently. I really do for a 90s book. Yeah. Mark Spector kind of agrees. Mark Spector thinks that the annual will give you a much higher return on investment currently. I would love to hear your logic around that, Mark Spector. Why do you feel that 14 will give you a return on investment? And remember, a return on investment can be measured by dollar amount and by percentage. Vincent says this is the same debate regarding Wolverine 2. Like, which one is more important for the first appearance, cameo, the last page? Yeah. And Vincent, hey, look, I agree, man. Like, it comes down to what's important to you, not what the label is. And if we as collectors continue to collect what's important to us, that'll dictate value and demand, period. So if the majority of collectors care more about the label than seeing a character in a first full story, that's what's going to dictate demand. And it's as simple as that. And again, Mark, I agree. Like this book could easily be called First Appearance, right? Like, period. Here he is. He appeared. It's a first. Period. End of story. Bye. And then, right, when you show up in a first full story, put Gambit first full story, or even first cover. I don't know, but again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter nowadays. The terms are stuck, and it is what it is. Vincent, I still don't really understand. And I'm not trying to be rude, Vincent. I'm trying to get to the bottom of what you're bringing to the table here. I'm a little lost. You started with the Go Collect. I spoke on I put my opinion out there on that. And then you brought up the issue of CGC saying that 266 is the first full. So I'm really trying to figure out. I see you got another comment coming up here too. So let me get to that. It is. So, and I showed that, guys. I showed that. It is consistent, and that's the bottom line. Guys, listen. Whether you agree with the term or not, it's consistent. CGC, CBCS, all of them are consistent with cover price, or excuse me, are consistent with Overstreet and are consistent with Marvel. And they state that Annual 14 is Gambit's cameo. Boom, right there. And state that 166 is indeed his first full appearance. Right there. So, regardless if you disagree with the term, the consistency is there. Vince is saying there's a lot. He says there's a lot of relativity to what you can afford. Absolutely. Guess what? Vincent? I was hunting. I've been hunting Uncanny 266 for a while, for probably the last year, right? And like Mark said and a couple others said, I think it's overvalued right now. I really do. So I already had one that I had since a kid. But you know what I said? I want to invest. It was on my 2020 want list, Uncanny 266. I said, you know what? I'm not going to, if I got that book, I want a high grade. I want nothing lower than a 9.0. And I'm just not going to spend $100+ on Uncanny 266. I might miss my chance. It might keep going up. I don't know. So you know what I did? I spent $20 on a near mint copy to have a second one of this, because that's what I could afford. And that's what I thought was better for me. So I hear you, man. Regardless of the labels, what makes you happy? What can you afford? And hey, you know, Right. I'm going to show you guys here. Let me tell you something, guys. This was my grail. This was my 2020 grail. And I'm so thankful to have it. Vincent says, if you can only get 180, guess what? You have the first appearance. For those who have 81, say that 180 is only a cameo. And guess what? Maybe they do. Maybe the industry says so. I don't give a darn. I have a book that has Wolverine showing up for the first time in a comic book. And guess what? It has a green label because there's no value stamp. Guess what else? I don't care. Would I rather have one that's not because of return on investment? Sure. Would I like to have 181 one day? Absolutely. But I'm not going to feel any less awesome for owning this book just because the industry wants a coin and a cameo. It's fine. It is what it is, right? JJ, some of us don't have that luxury. I'm glad you do, but respectfully, I mean that's awesome. But you know, a lot of this comes down to budgeting, JJ. I mean, that it's real, and you know, we have to be grateful for what we have, for what we can budget. You know, we're all in the struggle. All right, let's go down. Let's keep moving, guys. Let's see what else is here. Mark says people just need to adopt a standard on what is called a full appearance first appearance. I agree, but like I said, I think the industry, even though it's not like defined in concrete, they've been consistent. But yeah, I want them to have like a Ten Commandments plaque. It needs to be stated somewhere, you know. But at least it's been consistent. We should know what to expect from the industry regarding in terms of differentiating a cameo and a first appearance. We should. All right, what else we got? I'll probably be wrapping this up here, guys. I meant for this to go 2 hours. I know that's a long stream. I don't like to go beyond that, and I appreciate every single one of you for hanging out. Vincent, what's up with your video? I'm assuming, did I cut out there for a minute, guys? I apologize. I said at the beginning of my stream, I have a new camera on the way. Starting next week, I will be 1080 high def. I want to always provide you guys, you know, with the best quality and the best shows and videos. And you know, you guys mean a lot for me just being here. And so I got a high def camera on the way. So I hope that makes the experience better moving forward for sure. All right, there's a lot of comments here. Let me just get past these guys. Not sure what we're talking about here, guys. I'm gonna keep scrolling. I hear you, Mike. You know, again, it's like I think the name is silly. I think it's silly, but it is what it is. And I think it's time that we just kind of move on and accept the fact that there is a consistent differentiation. And JJ says, yeah, they need standardized definitions. And like I said, we can monitor what seems to be standard because it's consistent, but it's not defined. It's not defined. I love that you guys are really going at it with each other and going back and forth with each other in the chat, man. That's so awesome. Brick Hunter says market dictates first appearance. I don't know if you were here in the beginning, Brick Hunter, but I talked about how it kind of goes both ways, but more so now in the age of information with social media and whatnot. Market does dictate, but we are heavily influenced first by the information that we get from the industry. So it's like the chicken or the egg. And I'll say it one more time. You know, before, back in the day, market clearly dictated it because we didn't have all this instantaneous information. We as collectors in the 70s and 80s didn't have CGC, all these online forums and you know, platforms, Twitter, Instagram, social media, and we bought whatever was hot, and that drove the value. And ultimately, you know, the idea of the first appearance wasn't necessarily the reason why we went after something. But now, and I talked about the current DC issue with Batman 89 or 92 or Hell Risen #3. The only reason why we went after 92 first is because the industry went and said, hey, we have this new character Punchline. First true appearance is going to be in 92. Went flock. But then he came out and said, well, you're going to see him in 89 first. Well, what is it? Is it going to be a cameo or what? Because I want the one that you're dictating to me. Chicken or the egg? What comes first? If our spending habits and our purchasing power follows what the industry is dictating, the market is going to decide, but merely because we are already following what the demand is pushing on us, if that makes sense. And markets can change though, and that's exactly it with the instantaneous information. You know, we can switch according to what we're following. We're not always autonomous in our decisions these days because we speculate so hard on what the industry is telling us to speculate on. Lisa says, not a fan of CBR lately. They've become awful negative. Yeah. You know what? I absolutely agree. And this is the problem. And this is, I don't know if you guys were here when I was talking about basically their opinion pieces. You know, they have industry power. And that's why I reference them. But they are turning more and more to becoming just plain opinion pieces that are extremely clickbaity. Absolutely. You know, and I think CBR is ultimately becoming one of the worst. Okay, so yeah, Vincent does say that if you go to the price guides and go collect eBay, well, eBay, you know, I mean, if you look at CGC, they are the same descriptions. They are consistent. That's what I'm saying. This argument about this book not being a cameo is really null and void, regardless of what you believe on the definition. Yes, Brick Hunter, there's no right or wrong way to collect comics. I wanna trademark that slogan, man. Journos Comics. There's no right or wrong way to collect. I love saying it, man. That's my deal. Man, I'm way behind in the chat, guys. I'm way behind. Oh, yes, yes. Brick Hunter says, anyone want to argue with me about 266 not being first? I say, I'll trade you your 266 for an annual any day. I'll probably hear crickets. Okay, guys. I want everyone in the chat watching right now. Tell me this. I want you to respond to this, and I'm going to take a poll. Where's my water? I need water. My voice is getting coarse. You guys got me on one. If you had $100 in your pocket, if you had $100 in your pocket and you could get 4 of these annual 14s, which is considered the first cameo of Gambit, or in near mint condition. Let's just say near mint condition. Or you could get one Uncanny 266 mint condition. Which would you go for? Let me know in the comments. Would you go for 4 annuals or 1 266? And go. And I'm going to scroll down while you guys are answering me. Try to catch up. JJ says, done. I'll trade a CGC 1.0 266 for a CGC 9.8 annual. Ah, he got you there. All right, Mark, just sub Doc Comics. It's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing the community love. Vincent, I do believe CGC needs to get power to help bring all standards up to having this concrete standard. Absolutely. I mean, look, I mean, we as collectors, many of us that love CGC, I mean, we put so much of our money, time, and energy, and we follow their trends so heavily. They dictate so much to us. There needs to be more communication and standards set by all of them. Okay, Doc Cop. And again, I've stated this. I ultimately agree. When Overstreet, CGC, or CBCS have the balls to define a cameo, this debate will be decided. You know what? Here's the thing. Ultimately, you're right. It'll never end until we have a clear definition by the industry. But I am ultimately going to say put the argument to bed because there is consistency. And that consistency is enough to look at it logically and say, okay, it's the same across the board. But ultimately, I agree with you. I don't know why it's so hard. I don't know why it's so hard to not have these standardized definitions implemented. I don't. All right, let's see. Going through these, I'm playing catch up, guys. I'm getting there. Lisa says, 299 has my favorite last page of a comic. Don't care if it's cameo. Happy, absolutely. It's a great book, and it is a great lead up to an iconic villain. Absolutely. Brick Hunter, we did talk about this, and that's where it's like the term cameo is just kind of silly. I agree. The industry should have just said first appearance. I mean, he's there, he appears. Hi, I'm here, even though it's a brief amount of time, and then call the other one a first full story or first full appearance, whatever. But it's just it didn't happen like that, and that's the way it is. I'm so glad no one mentioned the first appearance of Black Spider-Man suit. Here's the thing, though. That's very similar. It's very similar because the industry does say that 252 is the first appearance, period, which is accurate, even though we see the black suit later on in its technical first appearance, but they call it an origin because it came out later. Now get this. If Secret Wars 8 happened to come out with the release date before ASM 252, it probably would have still been called Origin and Cameo because it happens at the end of the book. And then 252 would have still been the first a true full appearance. Let's see this. Sequential Geek says, there you go. So here it is. When the Gambit show drops and the cameo and first appearance Oh man, shit. I don't know. I don't know what you meant there. I tried to dive into this comment. Oh, here we go. You will have to make a new user how to bid for peeps new to this gamut. Oh, maybe so. Let's see. Okay, let's see what Mark talks about ROI. I value ROI based off the percentage. You could get an X-Men annual for 10. Well, I don't know about 10 now. It's gaining a little bit. Maybe for lower mid still, or mid grade. Yeah, but I got mine like last year or so, and I paid like $20 for a near mint copy. Yeah, so okay, but I agree with Mark. Like ultimately, I think in the long run, it's almost obvious that 266 is going to hold more value and increase in terms of dollar amount. But I agree, understanding business, I agree with Mark. Ultimately, you might be able to flip a annual right now and get a larger percent return on investment, but it's not going to mean you get a larger dollar amount. So that is a good point perspective. For sure. Oh, this is a good question. Kind of off topic. But Monk's Den says, would you pay extra for a newsstand copy of an issue, or does it matter to you? Here's the thing. I like to collect both. Boom. I will usually search out a newsstand. I will want to find a newsstand first, and if it's a couple more dollars and it's in the same grade, I might go with the newsstand. But ultimately, if the best grade is a direct, I'm buying the direct. Search out newsstands, but if all else fails, go for the higher grade, no matter what, no matter if it's a newsstand or a direct. If I was sending one of these copies to CGC, I would ultimately pick the best grade. I wouldn't send I wouldn't send a newsstand in just because it's a newsstand over direct. Whichever one I thought would get the higher grade, that's the one I would send in. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it most definitely. Okay, Logan, let's see what you're talking about. Overstreet needs to revise. The comic book think tank needs to revisit. Logan? What does Overstreet need to revise? Honest question. So, because I have Overstreet right here, and it states that this book is his first brief appearance, and it states 266 is his first full. The only thing about Overstreet is that they use a different word that means the same thing to the industry. Any cameo book, any book by industry standard that's coined a cameo, is coined first brief appearance by Overstreet. So ultimately, Overstreet is still consistent with everything out there. CGC, even the publishers and so forth. And Brick Hunter says, I don't understand why cameo is a bad thing. I agree. I agree. Oops. Okay, I'm caught up. I am caught up. Let's see. But I jumped down to get caught up. All right, so I'm going through the poll. It looks like 266 won to my question. But we did get a good decent amount of people saying 14. We got a few. But let me ask this again, guys. Let me ask this again. If you weren't in it for flipping, because like we just talked about, if you're a flipper, you might have the ability to buy 4 of these books for the same price. A larger investment in terms of percentage. But think of it like this. If you spend $100 at 25 each, sell all of them at 40 bucks and you make 15 off of 4 books, that's 60 bucks. You got 60 extra dollars in your pocket. But you get one near mint at $100 and you can sell it at 180 flipping it. You still have a more higher dollar amount in your pocket. But let me ask you this. For long term, if you had $100, would you get 4 of these? Or 1, 266, which one would you do? And if you don't answer 266, I'm going to think you're crazy or trolling me, man, because I think it's clear that for the long-term investment, when we're talking about long-term investment, 266 is going to hold that value in terms of dollar amount. All right, guys, man, you guys have made this fun. I'm going to bring up one last thing before I go, guys, because it's getting late. And you guys have kept me here. You guys always do that. You keep me here longer than I intend, and I appreciate it. All right, let me bring one more thing up, guys. Hold tight. I'm going to go on another screen real quick. And I'm going to pull up a comment that somebody left that I want to share. I really appreciated this comment. Give me 1 second. I'm going to say, too, while you guys are waiting for this last piece here, go sub everyone up in the chat if you guys can. I don't know how many of you have your own YouTube channels. All right, I'm ready, guys. I got this comment. I got a comment that I want to read. All right, let me pull it up on screen. Thank you guys for your patience there. I'm going to pull this out. All right, we're going to go screen share. We're going to go. Boom. Endless Me's. All right, guys, check this out. I'm going to wrap this live stream up by sharing this comment. And it's this comment right here in the middle of the screen. Shoot. I lost my phone again. I'm all over the place today, guys. Let me see. Can you guys see that on your screen? You guys can see that. Good. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to read Don White's comment to you guys. As soon as I heard argument, I was in. The term cameo within the context of comics is just an evolution of the word esoteric to comic fanatics. We collectively get what they mean. Small potatoes. I thought the differentiation you were going to get into would be the difference between a film cameo and a comic book cameo. On film, we see anything from a barely recognizable to a walk-on 10-second spot for an actor and so forth. In comics, it seems they use the term cameo mostly to define a yet unidentified character who appears for rarely more than a panel or so, usually far away or in the shadows. This is definitely a bee in your bonnet that most let slide. You are not misunderstood here, but if we all understand what cameo means in the context of comics, what's the difference? If you assess their historical value, Hulk 181, X-Men 266, X Factor 6 are what involve us in the character, and it's obvious why they are worth more in every way. When they draw that first cameo scribbled appearance in the distance, they're still developing that character as that cameo goes to press. Thus, not even the creators know precisely what that character's full fleshing would even be at that point. A cameo appearance is nearly the value equivalent of a number 0, which is rarely worth a thing because readers will never accept the number 0 sales trick us as a first issue. Guys, I want to just give a shout out to Don there because I just felt he hit the nose on the head with that comment. You know, I just want to close on the fact that it really is what it is, guys. If we don't like the terms, we cannot like the terms. But when it comes to the specific books of Uncanny Annual 14 and 266, which I do not have, the terms are relevant to precedent and they fit into the trend of what we have seen be the standard of what a cameo and a first full appearance are. And it's just that simple. They've called 266, they meaning Marvel themselves, not a third party. They have called 266 Gambit's first appearance since day one. Nobody is lying about it. The grading companies are consistent about it. Overstreet are consistent about it. The standard and the foothold in the industry are not arguing about it whatsoever. Yet here we are. So, whew, man, with that being said, guys, I'll probably let this topic go for a long time. I'm beat. I'm spent. I made 3 videos on this topic this week before I came and did this live stream. And I'm literally spent. Like, I'm exhausted. It's tiring. So I appreciate all of you guys coming on today. I want to see what Brick Hunter said real quick. We may debate, argue about cameo, brief, first, full, first, but know that I love you all because we all have the same love of this hobby. And guys, I said that like 20 minutes into my stream. Brick Hunter, I salute you for stating this. I appreciate you so much for stating this. And for all of you that are still here, I know a lot have dropped off already. But for you, those of you that's still here, I want you to know that, like I said earlier, we can sit here and we can argue and debate and argue and debate. But at the end of the day, if we don't allow ourselves to say, you know what, okay, it is what it is, and move on with the same mutual love and respect that we had before we came into the room, why even bother? I mean, it just takes the love and the joy out of the hobby. It takes the love and the joy out of having a community, and it's not worth beating a dead horse. If and I like to challenge people. Believe me, like I studied law and I studied debate and I took debate classes and I never lost an argumentation or debate ever. And I'm being a little bit cocky saying that. I'm sorry, but it makes me feel good to say that because I'm proud of it at the same time. And but I think it goes to show that I love argumentation, respectful argumentation. So if I'm going hard, if I'm challenging you, I'm not being rude, I'm not being disrespectful, I'm just challenging you. But if I do that and I prove your point null or void, and you change up what you say to try to talk circles around me, or if somebody does that to somebody else, that's where it takes the fun out of it. And same with me. If somebody proves me wrong and proves my point null or void, it is only right for me to humble myself and admit my flaw. And that way I learn something from that other individual. And that's where I can't have these conversations, especially with something that we all should be loving and enjoying, with comic books. I can't get into a debate about comic books and prove you wrong and have you just like, no, I didn't say that. I'm saying this now. Just to try to be right. And for me to do that to you would be so wrong as well. It's one thing that people get like that over politics and stuff. We shouldn't even get like that over politics. We have to be humble. But to get like that over comic books, it's just like, guys, come on, like, chill. Why so serious? So, with that said, guys, I really appreciate you all. Isaac, thanks for always showing up, man. It's gonna be a debate that lasts a while, and I'll still debate it. But for right, I'm good for a minute. I'm going into hibernation on this. JJ, thanks for coming on and providing so much great input. I like that. First full appearance next time for sure, for sure. That's a good question, Lisa. If there wasn't a market, I think the talks would be there ultimately a little bit, but would they be as important? Absolutely not. And I don't think people would be so like holding on to their like preconceived biases for sure. Let's see what Mike says. At the end of the X-Men Annual 14 is the true first appearance. And ultimately, I agree. But I'm just one little dude sitting here in California, sitting in front of a computer, talking with a bunch of fellow geeks, right? So, all right, guys, high voltage. Hope you have a good night. Thanks for coming out. Jojo, thanks for catching the end. Yeah, I saw you a little bit. I watched a little bit of the unboxing, but I had a crazy day today, personal stuff. Oh my goodness. But I still had to come out here and do this and connect. So Logan, thanks for coming out. All right, guys, thank you all. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I appreciate the back and forth. I love it. I appreciate you all. Be safe, be healthy, be kind to each other. And until next time.